Hello students, and welcome to the CompTIA Tech Plus exam course brought to you by Third Level Technology. I am your instructor, Jim Herbie. In this episode, we're going to continue in Module 3 of the exam objectives and discuss Section 3.4. Our topic is web browsers. Let's begin.
We're going to begin our discussion by taking a look at the basics of what is a web browser. If you have ever been on a computer device and opened up the internet, software application that launches is a web browser. Web browsers are software apps that allow users on computer devices to access data and websites over the internet. Some common web browsers you probably are familiar with include Google Chrome, Apple Safari, and Microsoft Edge. Web browsers work with the HTTP protocol. This is the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This is the protocol that allows web browsers to access websites, access and download HTTP web page files. Commonly, your web browsers will connect to web servers. Remember, a server computer is one that's going to be a central location that stores certain types of files for users to access them. And web servers are where we store the HTTP files for all of the websites that you can access over the internet. The first web browser feature we're going to discuss is caching. You also will hear this called the cache. Your web browser cache is a feature that will store your internet history. This is where we can store in our temporary memory the websites that we have visited in a defined period of time. Our cache will also store the files of any recent downloads to our computer, as well as our login credentials, such as our usernames and passwords that we use to access certain types of website data. Your web server computers will be the location where we permanently store our HTML web page files. The cache is going to be where we can access temporary web files to allow us to quickly access the locations and websites that we frequently visit. By using our cache and our temporary memory, it works similar to RAM memory within our computer. Your storage is going to be where data is permanently kept. But your RAM memory is going to be that temporary location where recently accessed files, programs, and apps will be stored for quicker access, because those are going to be the resources we more frequently use. The same concept applies to your browser cache. Your browser cache also has individual files called cookies. Cookies are going to be the files that are stored in the browser cache that will be all of the login credentials that you use on websites. So anytime that you access a website that requires you to enter in a username or password, this will be stored in your browser cache. Next, we're going to discuss client-side scripting. Client-side scripting is when we use a scripting programming language to create code that can be executed and run within a web browser. It is a best practice in your web browsers to disable client-side scripting. And it's important to understand why. When you download a website or visit an online resource, there is going to be program code that was used to create that website. And those code are what we call embedded pages. These are going to be scripting code that is contained within your specific browser that is stored so that websites can run correctly when they are accessed. For scripting is with a client-server architecture. This is where all of our script code will be stored on a central server computer, and our remote users can access them through a request to that web server. Client-side scripting is when the individual user is programming code to be executed within the browser. Unless you are an extremely seasoned and experienced developer, it is not recommended that you allow individual users to create and modify code that is run through your browser. Your most common scripting language that you see is JavaScript. but there are many other programming languages that we can use to create script code that runs within our browser. The next browser feature we're going to discuss are extensions. Browser extensions are software modules that allow users to customize specific settings within the browser window. We can use extensions to enable or disable certain types of features within our internet browsers. Some common browser extensions that we see include language translation. This is where we can convert text into different languages automatically. We can also enable PDF document file viewers. This allows us to view PDF documents within our browser window. And we can also block pop-ups and ads that may appear while we are online. Browser extensions are frequently downloaded from the internet. Whenever you see an extension appear within your browser, you want to make sure that it comes from a verified and trusted source. You should never download any browser extensions that come from a website or resource that is not verified and authenticated by your IT team. Next, we're going to discuss proxy settings. Proxy settings are filters within our web browser that will monitor the internet traffic that we are accessing to identify any suspicious activity, as well as identifying any types of malware or viruses. Our proxy settings allow us to deny any type of web traffic or website that has any warning signs of the presence of malware or viruses. With our proxy settings, these are going to be things that we run within our web browser. On our network, we probably will also have additional proxy resources in the form of a proxy server. A proxy server is a hardware device that is typically integrated within our firewall. This is where we can allow or deny certain types of web traffic based on criteria such as application type, port number, as well as keywords and presence of malicious files. The proxy settings within our web browser do the same functionalities, but they do so within the software application that is the browser that we have on our computer. So many times you want to check the configuration settings that you have within your proxy server and make sure that the proxy settings that we have within the browser are the same and match up. This makes sure that we have consistency across all of the different traffic rules we have for allowing or denying certain types. Our next browser feature that we're going to discuss are security certificates. You sometimes also see these called digital certificates. Security certificates are tools that we use to ensure that websites that we visit are trusted and encrypted. Security certificates are issued by organizations known as certificate authorities, or CAs. These are entities that keep records of all of the different certificates that are issued to websites. They allow us to identify the owner of a specific website or a domain, as well as to validate the website's IP addresses and domain credentials. Security certificates use encryption. Remember, encryption is when we encode our plain text data so that it cannot be accessed by hackers or unauthorized third parties. And digital certificates are used with our web page encryption through the form of public and private encryption keys. Every website certificate will have a public encryption key. This will be the encryption key that is used to verify the identity of the website itself. And each user that is accessing a website will have their own private encryption key that will be specific to that individual. Security certificates will be frequently updated by the website's domain owner. A valid certificate will have a verified domain name, as well as a verified IP address, as well as the ability to have encryption in the sending and receiving of website traffic. If our web browsers identify any website that has an expired or an invalid certificate, we should make sure that our browser settings are configured to deny any of those types of web traffic. And lastly, we're going to discuss pop-up and script blockers. These are ways that we can prevent web windows from appearing during our normal internet activity. Pop-ups are a very common feature when we are using older web browsers. If you are using an older version of a web browser, they will frequently have known vulnerabilities. Because older browser versions have known attack vectors or vulnerabilities, hackers can pinpoint those locations as ways to infect our computers with malware and viruses. One frequent malware type are pop-ups. Pop-ups can appear in the form of unwanted advertisements or browser windows that appear that will show a website that is controlled by that hacker. Sometimes, though, we have websites where we want the pop-ups to appear because they are legitimate. If you visit any type of website that requires a captive portal authentication, these are pop-ups that you want to enable. It's very important within your browser settings that you create what's called a whitelist. A whitelist is going to be a list of all of the websites that you wish to allow pop-ups to appear from. Pop-ups frequently will appear in a new browser window. You want to check the web address of that pop-up. If you see any pop-ups that have a bit.ly or a web address that is an unrecognizable string of characters, that's frequently going to be a clear warning sign that it is a phishing site and one designed by hackers to attract you to their site so that once you click on a link or download a file, they will be able to infect your computer device with malware and viruses. Script blockers are related. These are a feature within our browser settings that will allow us to deny and block any type of script code that is attempting to launch within our browser. One last thing to remember about browsers is that you want to make sure that they are compatible both with your operating system and the applications you are running on the device.
That will conclude our discussion of Section 3.4 Web Browsers. In our next episode, we'll move on to Section 3.5 in the objectives and discuss artificial intelligence. We thank you again for following along in the episodes and the course, and wish you best of luck in your studies. Enjoy the rest of your day.